Hello everyone! From an early age, we hear tales and legends about magical beings, the ones believed to dwell in the clouds, deep forests, and the ocean depths. Yet no one's ever come face to face with them. But what if all these stories were true? Who are these strange creatures? Are they fierce monsters? Or higher beings who just prefer to steer clear from humans? Or could they be reflections of our inner selves? Today we'll delve deeper into this intriguing realm with two stories. America, Texas. A tragedy has recently befallen the fishing town of Palacios on the coast of the Gulf of Mexico. A massive oil spill has tarnished the beaches and left the local fishermen without a job. A concerned man discovers a lifeless pelican on the sand, its feathers matted with dark sludge. He brings the poor bird to the local post office and ships it off to the headquarters of the Titan Oil Company, the company responsible for the environmental disaster.
You want to go express your priority with that?
Send it regular. Give it time for the stink to set in.
Before the disaster struck, Sharko Peters had a thriving career as a respected fisherman, earning him the nickname, the Shark. While his fellow fishermen are still hopeful about their prospects and are getting their boats ready, Sharko has come to realize that the Titan management is lying about their cleanup efforts. A year ago, he was out on the boat to deal with the aftermath of the oil spill, and right above him, airplanes started dropping chemicals to dissolve the oil. Sharko blacked out, ended up in the water, and suffered chemical burns and lung damage. Since then, he's been left with impaired vision in one eye and has to carry an oxygen tank with him at all times. Once a fearsome captain, capable of catching any fish, Sharko now finds himself unemployed and crippled. Sharko walks into a bar where a tipsy fisherman insists he has seen mermaids. He says they pulled him into the ocean and tried to rip him apart. Thankfully, his buddy stepped in, firing his gun and scaring the creatures off. Naturally, no one in the bar believes his wild tale. So to prove his point, the sailor shows the scars on his body. However, it doesn't convince the bar crowd, as there's no telling who might have scratched his stomach. The upcoming day marks the official reopening of the bay for fishing, with the government declaring the water safe. While most fishermen eagerly prepare to return to the sea, Sharko has no intention of joining this farce. He firmly believes they won't catch any fish. Opportunistic politicians are exploiting the situation, using it as a high-profile event to boost their popularity. Sharko becomes angry and overwhelmed by a sense of helplessness in the face of injustice. He leaves to calm down in his car, tears welling up in his eyes. It's at this moment that Breezy, a rather laid-back and often tipsy fisherman, comes across Sharko. Breezy wants to borrow Sharko's boat, but the man declines. He recalls waiting for Breezy for 2 hours on a previous occasion, only to later discover that Breezy was arrested and hadn't bothered to inform him. As Sharko drives away, a frustrated Breezy hurls insults at him. At home, Sharko spends the evening alone. He drinks and watches his favorite old TV show. In the morning, he tunes the radio to the frequency of ships at sea. For a while, he listens to the sailors talking, imagining himself on board with them. But then he comes back to reality and turns the device off in a rage. Sharko goes to the beach again, where he looks for more evidence of the Titan's lies. He puts another fish killed by oil in the truck, and afterwards, he hears a strange sound. The man comes closer and sees the body of a woman covered in oil. He's shocked to discover that instead of legs, she has a fish tail. Sharko pokes the mermaid with a stick and is convinced that she's dead. Still unable to believe his eyes, Sharko puts the mermaid in the back of the truck and drives it to his house. Summoning his last ounce of strength, he hauls the oxygen tank and the lifeless body he stumbled upon across the lawn. Then Sharko fills a tub with ice and puts the body in it. He hears on the radio that the other fishermen have returned empty-handed. All the fish are tainted with oil, and some of them even have several heads and other deformities. As Sharko looks into the mirror, a reflection of an aged man with a face etched by scars looks at him. However, it's not what Sharko sees. Instead, he envisions himself as a strong and fearless conqueror of the sea. With one hand, he covers the disfigured side of his face, defying his misery with a triumphant dance. Despite spending countless years at sea, the most important discovery of his life happened on land. His jubilation is suddenly interrupted by a phone call from a lawyer who offers him to join a group lawsuit against Titan for sailors' health damage. Sharko finds it both humiliating and pointless and quickly hangs up. Sharko keeps cracking open one beer can after another while glued to the TV. Suddenly, he hears some rustling coming from the bathroom. He cautiously opens the door, and in the dim light, he sees a mermaid getting out of a plastic bag. She also notices him. She lets out a scream and startles him. Sharko hurriedly slams the door and grabs his rifle. Slowly, he opens the bathroom door, but the mermaid grabs his leg, sinking her teeth into his arm. They end up wrestling on the floor, and the creature manages to bite through Sharko's arm. Eventually, he casts a net over the mermaid and pushes her back into the tub. Panting, he points the gun at the unusual creature, but can't bring himself to pull the trigger. Just then, a pleasant tune fills the air, and the mermaid stops struggling, instead looking at the man hopefully. The next day, Sharko heads to the store to buy some groceries, picking up meat and offering the captive mermaid a choice between fish and steak. She points at the steak.
Good choice. I wouldn't want that farm-raised shit either.
The man cuts a hole in the netting for the mermaid to eat through. He also helps her clean the oil off her gills so she can breathe easier. Later in the evening, Sharko catches the TV show again and hears a tune coming from the bathroom. He decides to keep his guest company and brings the TV to her. To help her follow the story better, Sharko gives her a quick recap of what's happening.
In this one, he falls in love with that one, Julie. She tricks him, see?
The man's father used to watch this show to improve his English when he moved to the United States. Sharko dozes off by the bathtub, and the mermaid tries to reach him with her claws. However, he is abruptly awakened by a noise coming from another room. It's Breezy, who snuck in to steal something. Sharko threatens to call the police, and in response, the troublemaker angrily smashes Sharko's radio against the wall. Breezy yells that Sharko hadn't even given him a chance, as he had refused to lend him a boat, even though they had ventured out to sea together on multiple occasions.
I let you on my boat. I gave you a shot. I gave you 10 shots.
Oh, good boy, Sharko.
Breezy figures out that crippled Sharko wouldn't stand a chance in a fight, so he continues to push him. Then he suddenly hears a noise coming from the bathroom and decides to check it out. Sharko fails to stop him from going in, and to Breezy's surprise, he stumbles upon a mermaid. His jaw drops, but he quickly regains his composure and suggests they sell it for a good profit. Sharko, on the other hand, insists on setting the creature free as soon as the ocean is actually clean. Breezy points out that it wouldn't survive for long in a bathtub regardless. The following day, Breezy shows up and helps Sharko set up a fish tank for the mermaid right inside Sharko's house. However, Sharko isn't thrilled with the quality of his work, and on top of that, Breezy keeps taking smoke breaks. Sharko's dad taught him to take pride in his work, and Sharko is holding Breezy to the same standards. But Breezy can't stand Sharko's constant nagging, which isn't surprising considering his own father had been tough on him, even burning him with cigarette butts. Eventually, Breezy calms down a bit, realizing that Sharko had a valid reason for scolding him. Sharko stresses the importance of keeping the mermaid a secret, warning that everyone would want a piece of their valuable catch if the word got out. They share memories of their days at sea on the same boat, although now their partnership is more of a forced one. Sharko understands that he needs to tell Breezy what he wants to hear. At last, the job is done, and the mermaid is swimming happily inside the fish tank, gracefully moving her fins in the crystal clear water. Breezy leaves as Sharko prepares a romantic dinner for himself and the mermaid. He sets the mood with some music and takes a seat at the table, facing the tank. After tossing a raw steak to the mermaid, Sharko shares stories about his father. His dad had a deep love for American music, cars, and television, and even adopted an American name. However, life was tough for immigrants in Texas, and some locals went as far as making threats. Nevertheless, his father fought hard to ensure his family's well-being and succeeded. In contrast, Sharko feels like he messed everything up and turned his efforts into dust. It surprises him how chatty he's become in the mermaid's company. With the melody playing once again, alluring images fill his mind. Suddenly, the doorbell rings, and the man opens it to reveal a young woman.
What's wrong? Don't you recognize me? You saved my life, remember?
It turns out that the fish tank is now empty. The mermaid has fully recovered and taken on a human form. She comes to thank the man, who is genuinely concerned about the sea creatures because he too has suffered from the effects of the oil spill. The woman approaches and removes the man's oxygen tube. She gently touches Sharko's face, miraculously healing his scars and restoring him to his former health. After a tender kiss, the beautiful mermaid and the man dance to the tunes of Frank Sinatra. They give in to passion, and later, Sharko fondly reminisces about his best catch.
Me, no immigrant son. I was Sharko, king of the ocean.
The sailor is overjoyed that he's regained his strength. The mermaid mentions she noticed how unhappy Sharko had been. The man couldn't help but think that it would have been better if he had just drowned on that fateful day. But now he's happy, and it's all been worth it. Several hours later, their peaceful moment gets rudely disrupted by unexpected visitors. Sharko steps out onto the street, approaching a group of people gathered around some cars. He still bears the same facial scars and holds onto an oxygen tank. Turns out Breezy told everyone about the mermaid, drawing the attention of the local fishermen. They acknowledge Sharko is right about the sea and corporate deception. However, with no fish to sustain their families, the rare creature could become a vital source of income for the entire community. Sharko initially tells them to go away, but then seemingly concedes, telling them to wait outside. Instead of showing them the mermaid, he brings a loaded gun and fires a warning shot into the ground.
I'm the king of the fucking ocean, and not a one of you's gonna take her from me. You hear?
The sailors decide to play it safe and leave. Sharko returns to the house, where the mermaid is still floating in her tank. Turns out all this time she has been causing the man to have hallucinations. However, Sharko remains lost in his illusions and makes a promise to protect the mermaid till the end. In his imagination, he envisions himself and the woman arriving at a pristine beach on a perfect day. The man sheds his unnecessary clothing, and the lovers joyfully run and then dive into the sea from the pier. Meanwhile, in real life, Sharko plunges into the fish tank with the mermaid. The predator grabs him, and the water turns red with human blood. This marks the end of the story. The city of Newark, New Jersey. In late February, strange objects rained from the sky. These things turned out to be living creatures that got the nickname angels for their pale skin, although they looked more like monstrous beings. Thin, bony, and wingless, with a vacant look in their eyes. Their origin remained shrouded in mystery, leading to discussions about whether these angels would prove to be saviors or destroyers of the world. A man named Brian is buying groceries at the supermarket. He notices a doll on the shelf and decides to buy it. When the cashier gives him his change, she accidentally drops a handful of coins. Brian panics and runs away without waiting for the cashier to pick up the change. He walks by the ballet studio as he heads home. The entire place is decorated for Christmas. Inside, he carefully wraps the doll and adds a heartfelt message for his daughter, Tabitha. Strangely, there's a bunch of identical Sharpies in the drawer. Afterward, he tucks the gift box amidst a pile of presents beneath the tall, withered tree. The guy spends his afternoon having a few drinks in front of the TV. Amy, his wife, arrives home late from her shift. She's a police officer. She's in a hurry to get to a therapy group session her doctor suggested. Brian was supposed to join her, but he claims he's not feeling well. Amy suspects this isn't the reason, and she's right. Her husband simply refuses to follow the advice given by the psychiatrist.
It's not the same thing. Their kids are all dead. Our kid is not dead.
Although it's been more than a year, Brian hasn't lost hope of finding his daughter. Amy chooses not to pressure him any further and leaves alone. She simply wishes he'd come, especially since she had already asked her coworker to cover for her. The following day, Brian visits a woman who uses hypnosis to help him recall the day Tabitha disappeared. He remembers that he picked his daughter up from ballet class, and they went to the store for some ice cream. There was a dog sitting near the entrance, and Tabitha wanted to pet it. Brian allowed her to go outside the store while he stayed behind to pay for their purchases. The cashier dropped some change, and Brian took some time to pick it up. During that short time, Tabitha vanished. She was wearing a pink tutu, so she was hard to miss, but no one passing by had seen her. Brian frantically searched the streets for his daughter, only finding her abandoned ice cream on the ground. Suddenly, he recollects seeing a suspicious minivan. The license plate details are fuzzy in his memory, but the hypnologist helps him retrieve them. Brian then goes to the police station and asks to run a license plate check in the database. Amy's colleague agrees to help, but has doubts about the reliability of the hypnosis. It's not exactly concrete evidence. Nonetheless, they have to do the check, and the officer assures Brian that he'll look into the matter. Brian is anxious that the case might be dismissed due to the lack of new evidence. Amy continues her regular sessions in the counseling group. She shares that Tabitha disappeared when she was 8 years old. She had a strong passion for ballet and wanted to have the brown ballet shoes worn by the dancers of the renowned Alvin Ailey's Dance Theater. Unfortunately, the local store only had pink ones in stock. So, Brian improvised by using a Sharpie to color them brown. Tabitha loved the shoes so much that she wore them all the time. As the color wore off, her father purchased more Sharpies and continued to retouch the ballet shoes repeatedly. Today, these shoes, along with other items belonging to their daughter, are still in their home. One of the members of their group is confused about what Amy is hinting at. It almost sounds like she wants to have her daughter declared dead. Amy, however, firmly denies this accusation. After the meeting, she gets a call from a coworker. He tells her that the info Brian got didn't give them any leads. Amy is caught off guard, initially thinking they found Tabitha. Ultimately, she's just upset that her husband hadn't told her about his visit to the police. As she's about to leave, she suddenly spots her daughter in a ballet tutu in the mirror. Amy recognizes her and chases after her to an old building. Inside, all she finds is a homeless man sleeping next to his shopping cart. To her horror, she sees a severed angel head inside the cart. When Amy gets back home, she tosses out all the brown Sharpies. Brian notices this and asks where they are. Amy replies that their daughter is gone, and she can't handle seeing her everywhere anymore. It's driving her insane. Brian disagrees and firmly states Tabitha will return.
When she does, she'll have everything waiting for her so she knows that we never gave up.
Brian accuses his wife of being weak and walks out. He continues to keep his daughter's room in perfect order. That's when he gets a call from the private investigator the man hired to run the license plate number one more time. Turns out, he found the owner's address. The next day, Amy is called to the station. Brian was arrested when he trespassed on someone's property looking for evidence. The police checked everything thoroughly. The owner of the minivan was out of town when Tabitha disappeared. But Brian is willing to do anything to find the culprit. Everyone sympathizes with Brian, so the police let the man free with a verbal warning. Amy then escorts her husband outside, where they meet Tommy, the leader of the counseling group, who gave Amy a lift to the station. Back at home, Amy scolds Brian for his rash actions and lack of trust in the police. Brian defends himself, saying the police don't care about finding a missing black girl, and he's at least trying to do something. However, he admits his lead didn't bring any results. Brian once again suggests that his wife isn't taking enough action, which really irritates her. Amy is frustrated because Brian has been unemployed for a long time, and she's been supporting the family by herself.
I don't point fingers when you drink yourself to sleep or spend a fortune on Christmas gifts.
She then admits to having an affair with Tommy, which shocks Brian to the core. He thought things couldn't get any worse. Amy explains that she gets no support from him as her husband and can't go on like this any longer. She tells him that if he truly wants to salvage their marriage, he needs to start making an effort. However, the man responds that he can't bring himself to do that because he's afraid that moving on with their lives will force him to accept that Tabitha is gone. As Amy goes to bed, Brian ventures out in search of a drink. He stumbles upon a diner that happens to be open, where Tony, the tired waitress, is catching a quick nap. She offers him a beer, but Brian, looking for something stronger, asks if she has something better. After rummaging through the manager's secret stash, Tony finds some tequila and joins Brian for a drink. Later on, she surprises him by suggesting they get to know each other more intimately. Brian refuses, as he has no intention of being unfaithful to his wife. Curious about how Tony ended up so cynical, he asks her about her life story. Tony explains that her carefree outlook on life is the result of an epiphany she had recently. On that particular day, she was working her shift. One of the visitors struggled to calm down her crying daughter. To catch a break, Tony stepped outside, where she spotted a guy peddling some unusual goods on the street corner. It turned out he was selling a concoction he claimed was made from the blood of fallen angels. Someone had figured out that the bodies of these celestial beings had mind-altering properties. Curiosity got the better of Tony, and she decided to give it a shot. The experience left her shocked, and she couldn't endure it for long before she ended up vomiting. But in the aftermath, everything became clear to her.
You know what it showed me? I'm a monster.
Brian replies that he's no better himself. Then the girl suggests playing a game of who's worse. She tells him that she attends counseling for parents whose children have died. However, her daughter is alive. Tony just abandoned her at a diner and moved far away. At the meetings, she lies to everyone, but it used to make her feel a little better, at least until recently. Brian asks where her daughter is now, but the girl has no idea and doesn't want to know. The man can't understand how Tony could give up her child so easily. He tells her the story of how Tabitha disappeared. Brian feels guilty because he promised to always keep an eye on his daughter. He got distracted by a couple of coins on the floor and lost her forever. Tony raises her cup in a playful toast to the worst people in the world, and then proceeds to turn on the jukebox and hit the dance floor, with Brian joining her. As they draw closer, just before their lips meet, the music abruptly stops. Tony rushes over to the cash register to grab some coins, accidentally dropping a few on the floor. In the blink of an eye, Brian disappears without saying a word. On his way home, he thinks he sees Tabitha darting into a narrow alley. Excited, he follows her and discovers a bunch of brown Sharpies on the ground, forming a path that leads to a garbage can. Inside, Brian finds a wounded angel, naked and defenseless, quietly awaiting its fate. Could it be that they showed up because they needed help and not the other way around? Brian carries the creature home and places it on Tabitha's bed. With Amy's assistance, they tend to its wound. They decide not to call the police, fearing the angel might be taken away. During their conversation, Brian tells Amy about people using their blood for pleasure. This leads the couple to ponder whether heaven is truly so wonderful if angels willingly choose to reside in this harsh world instead. They soothe the creature, and later find themselves drifting off to sleep on the floor. In the morning, the angel feels better and calls out to his rescuers. He takes some of his own blood and places it in Brian and Amy's mouths. Their worries and anxieties begin to crystallize into thoughts at a heightened pace, and Brian accepts the painful truth that his daughter is no longer alive, leaving him struggling to understand who he is now that she's gone.
I never even wanted to be a dad, but now I am, and I've got no kid.
Amy says they're still a family and can spend the rest of their lives together. Her anger drives her to smash the Christmas tree and the gifts, which reek of death. Brian is overwhelmed by guilt, pounding his chest in remorse. They both briefly pass out from exhaustion, and when Brian asks about Amy's involvement with Tommy, he leaps up in shock upon discovering she had an affair right under their roof. He rushes to the support group meeting to confront Tommy, punching him in the face, then swiftly retreats. Back at home, Amy helps Brian in tending to his hand, hurting from the punch. They fondly recall how they met each other and started dating over 2 decades ago. The couple shares a kiss, giving in to passion. Suddenly, the angel appears from the second floor, slices his neck, and showers the lovers with his blood. Their feelings transcend the boundaries of reality, and they find themselves in an empty theater hall. Tabitha appears on stage in brown ballet shoes, performing her last dance for her parents. With tears in their eyes, Brian and Amy say goodbye to their daughter.
Though they knew their daughter was gone, the angel gave them a chance to say goodbye.
Sharko's favorite TV show is called Bonanza. It's a drama centered around a father and his 3 sons, each from a different mother. At various points, Sharko quotes one of the characters, saying, "I'm just a cowboy. Don't reckon I fit in a place like this very good." There's a woman in the show who's trying to seduce the hero for her own selfish reasons, which is a hint at the mermaid and Sharko's relationship. In the second story, we learn about Alvin Ailey, a gifted black dancer renowned for seamlessly blending elements of theater, modern dance, ballet, and jazz in his performances. In 1960, he created an iconic dance, Revelations, which achieved global acclaim. Tabitha's story about her brown ballet shoes shed light on a time when dark-skinned ballerinas had to paint their pointe shoes. These shoes were originally designed to match the skin tones of white ballerinas so they wouldn't be noticeable on stage. Brown pointe shoes eventually became an important symbol, emphasizing that a dancer's skin color should never hinder their ability to showcase their talent. The Monsterland series is based on the book North American Lake Monsters by Nathan Ballingrud. As always, check out the name of the series in the description below. In the meantime, let us know in the comments what magical creatures fascinated you the most when you were a kid. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to get even more cool recaps.